In this Ask BRStv, we answered John Souse's question from YouTube. With a continuous duty dosing pump, would you push or pull into a calcium reactor? Hey, Randy here with an Ask BRStv question coming to us from John Souse on our YouTube comments about the continuous duty peristaltic dosing pump from Kamoer, who asks what the best way to use these pumps would be on a calcium reactor. Either push water into the reactor or pull water through. My answer, John, with a peristaltic dosing pump, I would almost always pull water through the reactor, and let me tell you why. So up until very recently, there really hasn't been a relatively affordable option for a continuous duty dosing pump solution to run with our calcium reactors. Oftentimes, myself included, you'd have to search the internet for a used hospital-grade dosing pump, and even then they weren't cheap, not to mention a brand new one almost costing as much as my tank itself. But recently, with the Kamoer Continuous Duty Dosing Pump, the reefing hobby got an affordable option geared specifically to those of us who wanted a more simple way to implement a calcium reactor on our tanks, and even more simple way to dial it into our tank's demands. And now enters one of the most commonly asked questions about using it on our reactor: do you push or pull? Honestly, you could get the job done with either approach, and my personal choice is definitely not the be-all end-all answer. However, I have three main concerns with pushing water into the reactor, which is why I generally recommend to pull water through. First, with water being forced into the reactor, there's a concern with overpressurizing it and causing damage to the seals or O-rings if that output were to become restricted or clogged. Second, along with this concern of restriction causing pressure to build up, the back pressure that could also be created could potentially damage the dosing pump itself or even burst a connection, which leads me to my last concern: leaks on my floor. Say that my calcium reactor were to spring a leak, with the pump pushing water from my sump into the reactor, there would be a nearly endless supply of water leaking out onto my floor. Yet if I'm pulling water through the reactor and it springs a leak, there would be a limited amount of water that can leak out before the reactor empties and the pump was only drawing air. So to wrap it up here, this approach is what I've personally used with a continuous duty pump on my own calcium reactor, and what I would also encourage others to do if they were on the fence about which way to connect one to theirs, because it's arguably safer for the reactor and pump and likely to reduce the chances of a major leak. After researching the forums and social groups, it does also seem to be the more widely agreed upon and used method. Thanks for watching, and thank you, John, for the great question. For those of you looking for a bit more, the best part about this is the actual experiences, knowledge, and comments that the YouTube reefing community shares on these topics as well. This conversation in the comments is where we get great questions for Ask BRStv episodes like this, so keep them coming, and we'll see you next time on Ask BRStv.